Every town has its secret wounds, places where the darkness doesn't just linger, it feeds. The rain lashed against the window panes of the old Victorian like skeletal fingers scratching at a coffin lid. Inside, Dr. Alistair Vance stared at the moving boxes, swallowing his new study. This house in Blackwater Falls, cheap, isolated, promising a fresh start after the scandal that shattered his psychiatry career, already felt like a tomb. The air tasted of damp plaster and forgotten memories. Down the hall, his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, whimpered in her sleep again. The same nightmare, every night since they arrived. Daddy, the children at the window, they have no eyes. Alistair clutched the vial of pills in his pocket, his own prescription, the only thing silencing the echoes of his ruined reputation. He was a man running from failure, dragging his innocent child into the maw of his own making. He checked Lily's room. Moonlight bled through the gauzy curtains, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to breathe. Lily sat bolt upright, eyes wide with a terror that wasn't childish fear, but primal recognition. She pointed a trembling finger at the glass. The window wasn't empty. 2 small figures stood in the drowning rain, pale faces pressed against the wet glass, waiting. They were children, a boy and a girl no older than Lily. Hoods shadowed their faces, but their postures unnaturally still. Alistair's breath hitched. Reason screamed, trespassers, pranksters. But his spine turned to ice. A low, guttural growl erupted from the family dog, Rex, huddled under Lily's bed, a sound of pure, mindless terror. Then the knock, not on the door, on Lily's window. 3 sharp, deliberate taps that vibrated through the silent house. Tap, 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 each one a nail in the coffin of reason. Blackwater Falls didn't welcome strangers. It watched them, with the cold, patient eyes of a predator sizing up wounded prey. Sunlight the next morning was a liar. It gilded the decaying storefronts of Main Street, but couldn't penetrate the suffocating silence. Eyes followed Alistair from behind dusty cafe windows, flat, hostile eyes belonging to people whose faces looked carved from weathered stone. At the cluttered town archive, Mrs. Gable, the librarian with skin like parchment and eyes like flint, slid a heavy ledger across the counter marked Ravenswood Asylum, Patient Logs, 1960 to 1985. Her finger, brittle as a twig, tapped a faded entry. Subject group, gamma behavioral anomalies, ocular degeneration phenomena, observed. Beneath it, a list of children's names and a chilling addendum. Manifestation requires invitation. Threshold breach permits full manifestation. The words weren't just ink on paper. They were a curse, breathed onto the page decades ago, waiting for its next victim. Ravenswood Asylum loomed on the cliff edge overlooking the churning gray abyss of the North Atlantic. Its broken windows were like empty sockets. Locals called it the Crying House, claiming fog sometimes formed shapes near its gates, small, grasping shapes. Alistair, armed with a flickering flashlight and Rex whining at his heels, stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of rot and something else, ozone and burnt sugar. Graffiti scarred the peeling walls. Don't let them in. And they wear faces like masks. In a crumbling therapy room, he found them, child-sized handprints scorched into the concrete floor, radiating intense cold, surrounding a crude drawing. 2 stick figures with enormous, completely black circles for eyes. The silence wasn't empty. It vibrated with the memory of screams and the eager patience of something still listening. They don't force their way in. They ask. And the asking, it worms into your mind. That night, the storm returned with a vengeance. Lily, pale and drawn, clutched her stuffed rabbit, staring at her window. Alistair's pills were failing. The whispers started, not outside, but inside his skull. Thin, reedy voices, layered with an unnatural, grating harmony. Cold, so cold, let us in. Just for a moment, he gripped his temples, the vial of pills rattling uselessly on the nightstand. Rex snarled, hackles raised, teeth bared at the empty hallway. Then the doorbell rang. Not the electronic chime, but the heavy, physical clang of the old brass bell. The sound wasn't loud. It was final. Through the rain-streaked peephole, Alistair saw them. The boy and girl, hoods down now. Their skin was unnaturally white, like grubs under a rock. Rain plastered dark hair to their foreheads, but their eyes... God, their eyes. They weren't just black, they were voids. Deep, lightless pits that seemed to suck the feeble porch light into nothingness. No pupil, no iris, no white. Just endless, hungry darkness. Looking into those eyes was like staring into the abyss at the end of time, and feeling it stare hungrily back. The girl spoke. Her voice was flat, monotone, devoid of any childlike inflection, yet it resonated with a power that vibrated Alistair's bones. "We need to use your phone. Our mother. She's waiting. Let us in." The words carried an unnatural weight, a compulsion. Alistair's hand trembled towards the deadbolt. It felt warm, inviting. Rex let out a high-pitched yelp and fled, tail tucked. Lily's sob from upstairs broke the spell. "No, Daddy, don't!" Narration line. A child's plea, the fragile thread holding back the flood. Alistair slammed the heavy oak door shut, throwing the deadbolt with shaking hands. Outside, silence. Then not a knock, but a thud. A single powerful impact that shook the frame. The girl's voice, now sharp, demanding, cutting through the storm. "We can't come in unless you tell us it's okay. Let us in." The blackness beyond the peephole seemed to pulse. The past isn't buried in black waterfalls. It walks, wearing the stolen faces of children. Driven by desperation and dwindling pills, Alistair tracked down Eleanor Voss, a reclusive woman living on the outskirts in a trailer choked with weeds and crucifixes. Her eyes, sunken and haunted, held the same deep terror Lily's had. She spoke in a rasp, fingers clutching a rosary. Her voice was the sound of guilt scratching at the inside of a coffin. Ravenswood. They called it therapy. Monsters in white coats. My brother Samuel, he was in Gamma Group, said they were making them special, making them see beyond, but they saw into him, into us. She described the ocular degeneration, not a disease, but a replacement. The children's eyes turning into obsidian voids as something else peered out. "They hunger," Eleanor whispered, a tear cutting through the grime on her cheek. "For warmth, for life, for the fear that tastes like candy." But the asylum walls, they were a cage. The thing inside them, it needs an invitation to step fully into our world, to feed properly. The townsfolk knew. Some, like Eleanor, lived in terror. Others benefited. The disappearances, Alistair breathed, recalling missing posters older than Lily. Eleanor nodded grimly. Sacrifices, offered to keep it satisfied, distracted. The children you see, they're shells, puppets worn by the first children, the ones from Gamma. My Samuel, he's in there, trapped, hungry. The final piece clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The black-eyed children weren't random demons. They were the original test subjects of Ravenswood, their humanity hollowed out, now acting as heralds and hunters for the entity they'd become fused with. They needed new invitations, new thresholds crossed to sustain the horror, to pull more into their void. The town wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was bound by a pact, written in the blood of its own children. The storm wasn't the sky weeping, it was the town salivating. The night of the Blackwater Harvest Festival arrived. Bonfires roared on the rain-slicked cliffs, but the light felt thin, defeated. Music played, but it was a discordant, frenzied reel that set teeth on edge. Townsfolk moved with a strange, jerky energy, their smiles too wide, eyes avoiding the shadows thickening beyond the firelight. Lily, clinging to Alistair's hand, pointed towards the old stone well at the square's edge. "They're here, Daddy." Not just two. Dozens. Pale faces emerging from the gloom between buildings, from alley mouths, all with those endless, hungry black eyes. They moved with eerie synchronicity, surrounding the square. The cheerful facade of the festival snapped. The music died. Mayor Briggs, his face a mask of grim resignation, stepped forward, holding a trembling young boy Alistair recognized from a missing poster, Timmy Henderson. "A gift!" Briggs shouted, his voice thick with false bravado and underlying terror. "A token for the cold ones, to keep the peace." He pushed Timmy towards the well. The well wasn't stone. In the moonlight, it looked like a gaping, toothless maw. This wasn't just distraction. This was the ritual, the invitation. Timmy, paralyzed with fear, stood inches from the well's dark opening. The black-eyed children glided forward, their monotone voices merging into a chilling chorus. "He is ours." Alistair saw it then, not just void in their eyes, but a sickly, unnatural green light, pulsing deep within the blackness like a dying star. Lily screamed, a raw sound of pure terror that cut through the night. Every black-eyed head snapped towards her. Her fear wasn't just sound, it was a beacon, a feast. Sometimes the only weapon against monsters is becoming one. The entity within the children focused on Lily. The green light in their eyes flared, bathing her in an unholy glow. She gasped, clutching her chest, her eyes rolling back. Alistair felt a wave of nauseating cold emanate from them, sapping his strength, clouding his mind with whispers of despair. "Join us. She is ours. She is warm." Mayor Briggs looked away. The trap was sprung. The town offered a sacrifice, but the children wanted the bright fear, the untouched soul, Lily. The pact demanded blood, but it craved innocence. Reason, pills, psychiatry, all useless. Only raw, desperate love remained. Alistair remembered Eleanor's words. The thing inside needs an invitation. He saw the well, the threshold. He saw the black-eyed children fixated on Lily, their power focused on draining her life, pulling her essence towards that dark maw. He couldn't fight them physically, but he could offer something they desired more than a single child's terror, a new herald. A broken man steeped in guilt and fear, a perfect vessel. He ran not towards Lily, but towards the stone well. He placed his hand on its icy rim, the boundary stone Eleanor mentioned. He looked directly at the girl leading the children, into those twin voids pulsing with green hunger. Narration line. He didn't shout. He whispered the words that tasted like ashes and damnation. "Take me," Alistair Vance breathed, pouring every ounce of his terror, his guilt, his brokenness into the words. "Let her go, and you can come into me. I invite you." Silence. The green light in the children's eyes flickered, then shifted. Off Lily, onto him. The girl's head tilted, a grotesque parody of curiosity. The chorus spoke, a single voice now chillingly satisfied. "Accepted." A force like a frozen freight train hit Alistair. He was flung backwards into the well. Not down into water, but into nothingness. An endless, silent, freezing void. He screamed, but no sound emerged. Then light, not the moon, but the harsh, sterile light of an institution. He stood in a tiled hallway. Ravenswood, but clean, operational. A young boy with freckles and terrified brown eyes, Samuel, was being dragged towards a steel door marked Gamma. The boy locked eyes with Alistair and recognized him, not as a rescuer, but as the same, as one of them. Alistair looked down. His hands, they were pale, too pale. He raised one trembling hand to his face. The cold wasn't outside anymore, it was in him, seeping into his bones, his soul, his eyes. Blackwater Falls got its piece. The cost was paid, in full. Sunlight, weak and gray, filtered through the dusty windows of the old Victorian. Lily sat at the kitchen table, drawing with crayons. Mrs. Gable from the library sat with her, sipping tea, her expression unreadable. Lily's drawings were no longer of bunnies. They depicted tall, thin figures in black suits standing beside a car, and a man with kind eyes that were slowly being swallowed by spreading inky blackness. Her nightmares had stopped. Her silence was deeper. Outside, near the edge of the fog-swallowed woods, a figure stood watching the house, taller than the children, wearing a raincoat too large, the hood pulled low. It didn't move. It didn't blink. As the first drops of a new rain began to fall, the figure slowly raised its head. Under the hood, where eyes should have been, were two pools of perfect, absolute darkness. Cold, hungry, patient. Narration line. It knew the rules. It knew the fear inside that house was still ripe, still warm. And it knew it only had to wait for the knock to be answered. The figure took a step forward towards the house, its movements stiff, unfamiliar. It paused at the garden gate, the boundary. It lifted a pale hand not to open the latch, but to knock. The sound, when it came, was soft, insistent, carrying the weight of frozen voids and broken promises. Inside, Lily looked up from her drawing, a strange calm settling over her small face. She knew that knock. Daddy's home. And somewhere in the whispering dark, a new pair of black eyes opened. Hungry. Waiting.